The late August sun painted Nashville's skyline in shades of amber, as Evelyn Hart sat cross-legged on her apartment's fire escape, her trusted Gibson guitar resting on her lap. Her honey-blonde waves caught the dying light as she absently strummed, a melody that had been haunting her dreams. Below, the city hummed with its usual rhythm, country music spilling from downtown bars, the distant rumble of trucks on Interstate 40, and the persistent chirp of cicadas. "One more time," she whispered to herself, adjusting her fingers on the fretboard. Her small treble clef tattoo peeked out from beneath her sleeve as she began to play, her voice joining the instrument in perfect harmony. The song was a cover of a lesser-known indie track she'd been practicing for tomorrow's open mic night at the Basement East. But something still felt missing. The familiar buzz of her phone interrupted her concentration. Evelyn's sea-green eyes narrowed at the screen, not recognizing the New York area code. Usually she let unknown numbers go to voicemail, but something made her answer this time. "Hello? Is this Evelyn Hart?" The voice was crisp, professional, with that unmistakable Manhattan edge. "Speaking," she replied, setting her guitar aside. "This is Regina Winters from Elite Events NYC. We're organizing a high-profile wedding at the Plaza next weekend, and your name came highly recommended by Christina at Nashville Wedding Network. Would you be interested in performing at the ceremony and reception?" Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. The Plaza, New York City. This wasn't just another local gig at a barn wedding or country club. "I'd love to hear more details," she managed, trying to keep her voice steady. As Regina outlined the requirements, 3 hours of performance, a mix of contemporary and classical pieces, specific songs for key moments, Evelyn's mind raced. The pay was more than she made in 3 months of local shows, and they would cover her travel expenses. "We'll need an answer by tomorrow morning," Regina concluded. The previous performer had to cancel due to a family emergency, and we're working on a tight timeline. Evelyn glanced through her window at her small studio apartment. Sheet music scattered across her bed, a half-empty cup of sweet tea on the windowsill, and her grandmother's old sewing machine in the corner where she altered thrift store finds into her signature bohemian style. Her parents' voices echoed in her head, her father's constant reminder that music is a hobby, not a career, and her mother's gentle suggestion that maybe it was time to use her business degree. "I'll do it," Evelyn said, surprising herself, with the firmness in her voice. "Send me the contract and song list and I'll start preparing right away." After ending the call, she sat in stunned silence for a moment before rushing inside to her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she researched the Plaza, its grand ballroom, the acoustics she'd need to account for. This wasn't just another gig. It was an opportunity to showcase her talent in front of New York's elite. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from her best friend, Ramona Chen. "Girl, where are you? Open mic sign-up starts in 30, don't tell me you're still practicing that same song." Evelyn quickly typed back, "Major news, coming now, you won't believe what just happened." 20 minutes later, she pushed through the door of their favorite coffee shop, The Morning Grind, where Ramona waited with 2 cups of their usual, chai latte for herself and sweet tea for Evelyn. The small bell above the door chimed as Evelyn rushed in, her oversized denim jacket slipping off one shoulder, revealing a vintage-inspired floral dress underneath. "Spill," Ramona demanded, pushing Evelyn's drink across the table. Her dark eyes sparkled with curiosity behind cat-eye glasses, and her straight black hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail that emphasized her sharp features. Evelyn took a deep breath and launched into the story. Ramona's eyes widened with each detail, and by the end she was practically bouncing in her seat. "The Plaza? The Plaza? Eve, this is huge. This could be your break." "Or a complete disaster," Evelyn countered, nervously twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "What if I'm not ready for something this big? What if I freeze up?" Ramona reached across the table and grabbed Evelyn's hands, forcing her to stop fidgeting. "Listen to me. You've been ready for years. You just needed the right chance, and this is it. Remember what you always say about your mom's wedding dresses?" Evelyn smiled despite herself. "Every stitch tells a story." "Exactly. And every note, You sing tells yours, so go to New York, get on that stage, and make them remember your voice. Later that night, as Evelyn packed her performance outfits and organized her sheet music, she couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to change. She'd chosen a mix of elegant, bohemian-inspired dresses that walked the line between sophisticated and unique, exactly like her musical style. Her phone lit up with a message from her mother. "Dad told me about New York. Be careful, sweetheart. Big cities have sharp edges." Evelyn smiled, typing back, "I'll be careful, Mom. Promise." She walked to her window, looking out at the Nashville skyline. The city that had shaped her voice, given her its rhythm, taught her how to turn pain into poetry and heartbreak into harmony. But something about this New York opportunity felt different, like the universe was finally answering all those midnight prayers she'd whispered into her pillow. Opening her laptop, she began researching the wedding couple, Richard Chen and Adelaide Morrison, both from prominent East Coast families. Their story read like a modern fairy tale. Harvard sweethearts, now both successful lawyers, getting married in the most prestigious venue in Manhattan. Evelyn caught her reflection in the window. Honey blonde waves falling past her shoulders, clear blue-green eyes bright with excitement, and that small silver piercing in her left ear catching the lamplight. She looked exactly like what she was, a Nashville girl with big dreams and an even bigger voice. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, touching the treble clef tattoo on her wrist for luck. It had become a habit, a reminder of why she chose this path. Music wasn't just what she did, it was who she was. She spent the next few hours practicing until her neighbors knocked on the wall, a signal that it was well past quiet hours. Collapsing onto her bed, Evelyn set her alarm for an early flight and closed her eyes, dreaming of grand ballrooms and standing ovations. What she couldn't know was that in less than a week, she would step onto a stage in New York City and sing a song that would change not just her life, but the life of someone who wasn't even supposed to be at that wedding, someone who would hear her voice and feel his carefully constructed world begin to crack. But for now, she slept, while Nashville's summer night wrapped around her like a familiar melody, and tomorrow waited just beyond the horizon, full of promises and possibilities. Maxwell Reed stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his Manhattan penthouse, absently turning the silver ring on his pinky finger as he watched the city below. From 50 stories up, New York looked almost peaceful, a glittering maze of lights and possibilities. His reflection stared back at him, tall, imposing in his tailored charcoal suit, blue-gray eyes sharp with the focus that had built his empire but hollow with something else entirely. "Mr. Reed?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "The meeting with Shanghai starts in 5 minutes. Max checked his father's old Patek Philippe watch, 7:55 a.m. here, 7:55 p.m. in Shanghai. Another day of international deals, another series of numbers that meant everything and nothing." "Coming," he replied, adjusting his tie and grabbing his tablet. The conference room buzzed with quiet energy as his team prepared for the video call. Max settled into his chair at the head of the table, nodding to his CFO, Daniel Reeves, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "The Chen Morrison wedding is this weekend," Daniel mentioned casually as they waited for Shanghai to connect. "Richard's father is hoping you'll reconsider attending." Max suppressed a sigh. Richard Chen had been 2 years behind him at Harvard, and their families had known each other for generations. But weddings meant small talk, dancing, and inevitable questions about his own romantic status, or lack thereof. "I have plans," Max replied automatically. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Driving that '67 Mustang around empty streets at midnight isn't exactly plans, Max." Before Max could respond, the screens lit up with faces from Shanghai, and he slipped into business mode. Numbers, projections, negotiations. This was where he excelled. This was safe. 3 hours later, with the deal successfully closed, Max retreated to his office. The wall of awards and press clippings seemed to mock him today. Maxwell Reed, real estate's rising star. Reed Development Group announces $2 billion project. The bachelor billionaire of Manhattan. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Darling, the Chens will be devastated if you don't come. Your father would have wanted you there." Max closed his eyes, feeling the weight of those words. His father had been gone for 5 years, but his presence still filled every corner of Max's life, from the watch on his wrist to the empire he now commanded. "Fine," he texted back. "I'll be there." That Saturday evening, Max's driver pulled up to the plaza, just as the September sunset painted the sky in shades of lavender and gold. He adjusted his midnight blue Tom Ford suit and stepped out into the cooling air, nodding to familiar faces as he made his way inside. The grandeur of the plaza's ballroom had always left him cold, but tonight something felt different. As he found his seat near the back, perfect for a quick escape later, soft music began to fill the space. A female voice, clear as crystal but warm as honey, wrapped around him like a forgotten memory. Max froze, his hand halfway to his seat. The voice sang a modern song he vaguely recognized, but transformed it into something ancient and new at once. He turned slowly, searching for its source. She stood on the small stage, bathed in soft light. A flowing burgundy dress moved like water around her tall frame, honey-blonde waves catching the light. But it wasn't her beauty that held him. It was the raw authenticity in her voice, the way she seemed to pour her whole soul into each note. Beautiful ceremony, wasn't it? A familiar voice jolted him from his trance. Vivian Blackwell slid into the seat beside him, a vision in emerald silk. Her dark skin glowed under the chandeliers, and her signature perfume announced her presence before she did. "Vivian," Max acknowledged, his tone carefully neutral. Their history lay between them like a loaded gun. 3 years of almost perfect, ending in spectacular disaster when he'd discovered her affair with his then business partner. "You haven't returned my calls," she said softly, placing her hand on his arm. "I've been thinking about us, about mistakes and second chances." But Max barely heard her. The singer had started another song, something slow and haunting. Her eyes were closed, lost in the music, and Max found himself holding his breath, afraid to miss a single note. "Who is she?" he asked, interrupting whatever Vivian had been saying. Vivian's perfectly manicured nails dug slightly into his arm. "Some last-minute replacement. Nashville, I heard. Hardly your usual type, darling." Max finally turned to look at his ex, seeing the calculation behind her smile. "We don't have a usual anything anymore, Vivian." "Excuse me?" He moved through the crowd, finding Richard Chen near the bar. "The singer," Max said without preamble. "Tell me about her." Richard grinned, clearly already celebrating his nuptials. "Evelyn something. Hart, I think. Adelaide's planner found her when our original entertainment canceled. Why? Don't tell me the unshakable Maxwell Reed is actually interested in something besides quarterly reports?" Max ignored the jab, his eyes drawn back to the stage. Evelyn Hart. Her name felt right somehow. Real. She was performing an acoustic version of a Florence Plus the Machine song now, her fingers dancing across guitar strings, completely oblivious to the way the entire room seemed to orbit around her. "Tunt. You should talk to her," Richard suggested, following Max's gaze. "She's here all night." But Max stayed where he was, watching from a distance. He saw how she interacted with the crowd between sets. Genuine smiles, easy grace, none of the artificial polish he was used to. When she laughed at something the wedding planner said, the sound carried across the room like music itself. Later, as the reception wound down, Max found himself lingering. Evelyn was packing up her equipment, her movements unhurried despite the late hour. He wanted to approach her to say, what? That her voice had cracked something open inside him? That for the first time in years, he felt awake? Instead, he did what he did best. He gathered information. A quick conversation with the wedding planner yielded Evelyn's contact details for future events. Within an hour, his assistant had compiled a basic profile. Nashville native, regular performer at local venues, degree in business with a minor in music from Belmont University, no serious relationships on record. As his driver took him home, Through the quiet city streets, Max held a business card between his fingers, turning it like he usually turned his ring. Simple cream cardstock, elegant font. Evelyn Hart, vocalist and guitarist. He hadn't spoken to her, hadn't even let her see him watching. But as he stood in his empty penthouse, Manhattan glittering beyond his windows, Max knew with absolute certainty that he would hear that voice again. What he didn't know was how completely Evelyn Hart would shatter every wall he'd built, every rule he lived by. How she would take his carefully ordered world and turn it into something wild and real and terrifying. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, he simply poured himself 2 fingers of aged whiskey, sat in his favorite leather chair, and let himself remember the way her voice had felt like coming home to a place he'd never been. The morning after the wedding, Evelyn woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains in her Plaza hotel room. Her phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from Ramona and deposits from the wedding planner. Success tasted sweet, but something felt unfinished, like a song missing its final chord. She ordered room service, and her first ever, and took her time getting ready for the flight home. As she packed her guitar, a knock at the door made her pause. A hotel employee stood holding a massive arrangement of white peonies and blue hydrangeas. "Miss Hart?" He handed her an envelope with the flowers. The card inside read in elegant script, "Your voice awakened something. Dinner tonight?" Maxwell Reed, followed by a phone number. Evelyn's fingers traced the embossed letters. The name meant nothing to her, but a quick internet search changed that. Maxwell Reed's face filled her screen, the handsome CEO of Reed Development Group, one of New York's most eligible bachelors, and apparently someone who had been at last night's wedding. She sat on the edge of the bed, flowers forgotten. Her flight home wasn't until tomorrow morning. The wedding planner had insisted on booking an extra night, just in case. Now it felt like more than coincidence. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from an unknown number. "I hope the flowers arrived safely. I promise this isn't as presumptuous as it seems. Max." Evelyn smiled despite herself. The gesture was absolutely presumptuous, but something about the admission made it charming rather than arrogant. She typed back, "The flowers are beautiful, but I have a strict policy against mixing business with pleasure." His response came quickly. "What if I promise this is purely about pleasure?" Heat crept up her neck. Before she could respond, another message appeared. "That came out wrong. I meant I'm not interested in hiring you. I just want to talk about music, and maybe hear you laugh again." Evelyn's heart skipped. He had heard her laugh? Had he been watching her? She should have felt uncomfortable, but instead she felt intrigued. "Just dinner?" she typed. "Just dinner. I know a place that makes sweet tea almost as good as Nashville's." That made her laugh out loud. "Impossible." "Let me prove it, 7 p.m.? Evelyn bit her lip, considering. Every practical bone in her body screamed that this was a bad idea. Rich New York executives didn't just want to talk about music with small-town singers, but something in his messages felt genuine, almost vulnerable. 7 p.m., she replied. "But I'm not dressed for anywhere fancy. Wear whatever makes you feel like yourself. That's who I want to meet." Hours later, Evelyn stood in front of her hotel mirror, scrutinizing her choice. A vintage-inspired midnight blue dress that floated when she moved, paired with her favorite ankle boots and denim jacket. Her honey blonde waves fell in their natural pattern, and she'd kept her makeup minimal, just enough to enhance her sea green eyes. At exactly 7 p.m., the hotel house phone rang. Max was waiting in the lobby. She took a deep breath, grabbed her small crossbody bag, and headed downstairs. The elevator seemed to crawl, giving her too much time to second-guess everything from her outfit to her decision to stay in New York an extra night. The doors opened, and she saw him immediately. Maxwell Reed cut an impressive figure in dark jeans and a charcoal cashmere sweater that somehow looked more expensive than most suits. His blue-gray eyes found her instantly, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, appreciation, and something deeper she couldn't name. "Evelyn," he said, stepping forward. His voice was rich and warm, with none of the sharp Manhattan edges she'd expected. "Thank you for saying yes." Up close, she noticed things the internet hadn't shown: the slight curl in his light brown hair, the way one corner of his mouth lifted higher than the other when he smiled, the subtle scent of his cologne that made her want to lean closer. "Thank you for asking," she replied, proud of how steady her voice sounded. "Though I'm still skeptical about this supposed sweet tea." He laughed, and the sound transformed his whole face. "Low expectations are the key to happiness. Shall we?" Instead of the expected town car, a classic Mustang waited at the curb. "Is this yours?" Evelyn asked, running her hand along the pristine midnight blue paint. "My escape vehicle," he said, opening the passenger door. "When spreadsheets and shareholders become too much." The car purred to life, and Max navigated through Manhattan's evening traffic with confident ease. They ended up in the West Village at a small restaurant housed in a converted brownstone. Twinkling lights draped the intimate courtyard, and soft jazz drifted through the open windows. "This is not what I expected," Evelyn admitted as they were led to a corner table. "From me or from New York?" "Both." She settled into her chair, taking in the mismatched vintage plates and mason jar glasses. "It feels almost like home. That's why I love it." Max watched her as she explored the space with her eyes. "It's real, authentic, like your music." Evelyn turned back to him, surprised. "You were there? At the wedding?" "I didn't see you." "I saw you," he said softly. "Heard you first, actually. Your voice." He trailed off, searching for words. It was like hearing something I'd forgotten I needed. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. No one had ever described her music quite like that. Their server arrived with 2 glasses of sweet tea, breaking the moment. Evelyn took a sip and her eyes widened. "Okay, this is actually good. Not Nashville good, but I'll take that as a win," Max smiled. "Now tell me about the song you opened with, the one about streets and memories." They fell into an easy conversation about music, about how she arranged covers to make them her own, about the way certain songs could capture feelings better than words alone. Max listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he'd been paying real attention to her performance. "Your turn," she said as their entrees arrived. "Tell me about your escape vehicle out there. Why that car?" Something shifted in his expression. "It was my father's. He taught me to drive in it, taught me about business in it, said some conversations needed movement to flow properly." He turned the ring on his pinky finger. A nervous habit, she realized. He died 5 years ago. Evelyn reached across the table without thinking, touching his hand lightly. "I'm sorry, it sounds like he was a wonderful teacher." Max stared at their hands for a moment before meeting her eyes. "He was. But enough about the past. Tell me about your dreams, Evelyn Hart. What does success look like in your world?" "Authenticity," she answered without hesitation. "Being able to make music that matters, that connects, without losing myself in the process. I've seen too many talented people become products, and I'd rather play in bars forever than let that happen, even if someone offered you everything. Studios, tours, promotion. Especially then." She leaned back, studying him. "What about you? What does Maxwell Reed dream about when spreadsheets and shareholders become too much?" He was quiet for a long moment, and she wondered if she'd pushed too far. But then he spoke, his voice low and honest. "Something real. All my life I've been surrounded by people who want something from me. My money, my influence, my name. Sometimes I drive around the city at night just to feel like myself again. Not someone's investment or opportunity." The vulnerability in his admission touched something in Evelyn. She recognized the loneliness behind his words, the same kind that sometimes crept into her lyrics late at night. "Play something for me," he said suddenly. "Not tonight, but soon. Something that's just yours, not a cover. I want to hear your truth." The way he said it, like a confession rather than a demand, made her heart race. "Only if you promise to really listen." "Evelyn," he said, reaching for her hand. This Corsiomur, I haven't stopped listening since I first heard your voice. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of comfortable conversation and lingering looks. When Max finally drove her back to the plaza, the night felt both endless and too short. Thank you for saying yes, he said again, walking her to the lobby. Thank you for asking. She hesitated, then added, and for proving me wrong about the tea. His smile was soft in the dim light. Have breakfast with me tomorrow before your flight? She should have said no, should have kept this perfect evening as just that, one perfect evening. But something about Maxwell Reed made her want to break her own rules. Yes, she said simply. As she lay in bed later, Evelyn hummed a new melody, something about late-night drives and unexpected connections. For the first time in years, a song was writing itself, pulled from her heart by blue-gray eyes and honest words. What she didn't know was that 20 blocks away, Maxwell Reed sat in his penthouse holding a glass of whiskey and watching the city lights, unable to stop thinking about the way her eyes lit up when she talked about music, or how her hand had felt in his. Neither of them knew that this was just the beginning, that their carefully constructed worlds were about to collide in ways that would change everything. But maybe, just maybe, they both felt it. The first notes of something extraordinary, beginning to play. The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the plaza's palm court, casting delicate shadows across the white tablecloth where Evelyn sat waiting. She'd chosen a simple sundress with a denim jacket, her honey blonde hair loose around her shoulders. Her flight home wasn't until afternoon, and something about last night made her want to stretch these New York moments as long as possible. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ramona. Tell me everything. Google says he's worth billions with a B. Evelyn smiled, typing back, He's different than I expected, more real. Real billionaires are still billionaires, Ramona responded. Be careful with your heart, songbird. Before Evelyn could reply, a familiar cologne announced Max's presence. She looked up to find him in a perfectly tailored gray suit, looking every bit the powerful CEO, except for the warmth in his eyes when they met hers. Good morning, he said, taking the seat across from her. I hope you slept well? Better than I should have, considering I leave today. She watched as he loosened his tie slightly. Early meeting? Board presentation at 9. But this was more important. The simple honesty in his voice made her chest tight. A server appeared with coffee and fresh pastries. Max ordered an espresso. Evelyn chose English breakfast tea, and for a moment they sat in comfortable silence. I wrote something last night, Evelyn admitted, running her finger along the rim of her teacup. After dinner. Max's eyes lit up. Will you share it? Maybe, someday, when it's ready. She smiled. Art can't be rushed, Mr. Reed. Max, he corrected gently. Please. Mr. Reed was my father. Something about the way he said it made Evelyn lean forward. Tell me about him? The real version, not the business magazine's version. Max was quiet for a moment, turning his father's ring on his pinky finger. He was complicated. Brilliant at business, less brilliant at family. But he tried. That Mustang? He bought it the day I was born, said he'd teach me to drive it when I was ready. And he did. Took me to empty parking. Lots at dawn. Taught me about torque and timing and how to feel the engine's rhythm. Like music, Evelyn said softly. Exactly like music. Max smiled. Maybe that's why your voice caught me the way it did. It had that same authenticity, that same raw truth. Their eyes met across the table, and Evelyn felt that now familiar spark of connection. But before she could respond, a smooth voice cut through the moment. Maxwell. What a delightful surprise. Vivian Blackwell approached their table like a runway model, every movement calculated for maximum effect. Her fitted red dress and sky-high heels screamed power, and her dark skin glowed with expensive skincare. But it was the predatory gleam in her eyes that made Evelyn sit straighter. Vivian? Max's voice had cooled several degrees. I wasn't expecting to see you here. Clearly, Vivian's perfect smile didn't reach her eyes as she turned to Evelyn. We weren't properly introduced. At the wedding, I'm Vivian Blackwell. Maxwell and I go way back. The emphasis on way back wasn't subtle. Evelyn felt the shift in the air, the weight of history and unspoken words. Evelyn Hart, she replied simply, refusing to be intimidated. Lovely to meet you. Hart? Oh yes, the singer. Vivian's laugh was like crystal breaking. How quaint. Maxwell always did have an appreciation for local talent. Max's jaw tightened. Vivian, we're in the middle of breakfast. Of course, darling, don't let me interrupt. Vivian touched Max's shoulder, letting her hand linger. We should catch up soon. Properly. Like old times. She sashayed away, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and tension in her wake. Evelyn took a careful sip of her tea, studying Max's face. Ex-girlfriend? Ex-mistake, he corrected, then sighed. I'm sorry about that. Vivian has a talent for appearing when least wanted. Rich ex-girlfriend, family connections, obviously still interested. Evelyn set down her cup. Sounds complicated. It's not. Max reached across the table, taking her hand. Vivian is my past. A past I'm not interested in revisiting. His thumb traced circles on her palm, and Evelyn felt her resolve wavering. Max, whatever this is between us, it's real, he finished. That's what scares you, isn't it? That this feels real. The truth of it hit her like a chord struck perfectly. I'm leaving in a few hours, going back to my small apartment, and local gigs, and so don't. Evelyn blinked. What? Don't leave. Stay. Let me show you my New York. Let me hear more of your music. Give this, us, a chance to be whatever it's becoming. His blue-gray eyes held such earnest hope that Evelyn felt her heart stutter. I can't just... Why not? Max squeezed her hand gently. What's waiting in Nashville, that can't wait. A few more days? Images flashed through her mind. Her tiny apartment, the familiar stages, the comfort of routine. But none of it felt as alive as this moment, as real as his hand holding hers. 3 days, she heard herself say. I'll stay 3 more days. Max's smile was like sunrise. 3 days to convince you that this is worth exploring? 3 days to see if this magic survives daylight, she countered, but she was smiling. 2. Neither of them noticed Vivian watching from across the room, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone as she typed a message. Neither saw the calculated fury in her eyes, or the way she smiled when the response came through. The morning light continued to dance across their table, casting patterns like musical notes on the white tablecloth. Evelyn thought about the song she'd written last night, about unexpected connections and taking chances. Maybe it was ready after all. My guitar's still in my room, she said softly. If you have time before your meeting. Max checked his watch, then pressed a button on his phone. Daniel? Move the board meeting to tomorrow morning, something more important came up. The look he gave her made Evelyn's heart race. This was crazy, impulsive, potentially disastrous. But as she led him to the elevator, her guitar case in one hand and his warm grip on the other, she couldn't bring herself to care. 3 days. 3 days to explore this connection, to see if the spark could become a flame. 3 days before reality came crashing back. But first, she had a song to share, and he had promised to really listen. What neither of them knew was that 3 days would change everything. That the song Evelyn was about to play would become the soundtrack to a love story neither of them saw coming. And that somewhere in Manhattan, Vivian Blackwell was already setting plans in motion that would test every note of their newfound harmony. The morning sun filled Evelyn's hotel room as she sat cross-legged on the bed, her Gibson guitar cradled in her lap. Max had settled into a plush armchair nearby, his suit jacket discarded, tie loosened, looking less like a CEO and more like a man ready to hear a secret. It's not finished, she warned, fingers hovering over the strings. And it's personal. Those are the best kind, Max said softly. Play it for me, Evelyn. She took a deep breath and began to play. The melody started gentle, like questions whispered in the dark, then built slowly into something more urgent. When she started singing, her voice carried all the vulnerability and hope of the previous night. Strangers' eyes in candlelight, speaking truths we dare not write, fast cars and slow songs, teaching me where I belong. The chorus swelled with emotion, and Evelyn let herself get lost in it, forgetting to be nervous, forgetting everything except the music and the way it felt to create something real. Some things can't wait for morning. Some hearts break their own warning. 3 days or forever, which one will we remember? When the last note faded, silence filled the room. Evelyn kept her eyes on her guitar, afraid to look up, afraid to see indifference or worse, pity in Max's eyes. Evelyn. His voice was rough with emotion. Look at me. She raised her eyes to find him leaning forward, his expression intense. That was... He shook his head, searching for words. I've never heard anything so honest. It's just a rough draft, she started. But he was already moving, sitting beside her on the bed, taking the guitar gently from her hands and setting it aside. It's beautiful, he said. You're beautiful. His hand cupped her cheek, and Evelyn felt the world narrow to this moment, this touch. When he kissed her, it was soft at first, a question more than a demand. She answered by sliding her fingers into his hair, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss until they were both breathless. I should go, he murmured against her lips. I have meeting. Stay, she whispered. Just a little longer. He pulled back enough to study her face, his blue-gray eyes dark with desire and something deeper. If I stay now, I'll want to stay forever. The word, forever, should have scared her. Instead, it sent warmth spreading through her chest. 3 days, she reminded him. Let's see what happens. Hours later, they walked hand in hand through Central Park, both slightly rumpled but glowing. Max had canceled his meetings, sent his driver home, and promised to show Evelyn his favorite hidden corners of the city. This is surreal, Evelyn said, watching children sail toy boats on the conservatory water. Yesterday I was just a Nashville singer doing a gig. Now I'm playing hooky in Manhattan with a billionaire. Max squeezed her hand. Would you prefer I was poorer? She laughed, bumping his shoulder with hers. I'd prefer you were less handsome. It's very distracting, says the woman who's been driving me crazy since I first heard her voice. He pulled her close, kissing her temple. Are you hungry? I know a place. His phone buzzed, interrupting the moment. Max glanced at it and frowned. Everything okay? Evelyn asked. Just work. Daniel's worried about the Shanghai deal. He pocketed the phone without responding. Come on. You haven't lived until you've tried Giovanni's pizza. But as they walked, Evelyn noticed his hand kept straying to his phone, his expression growing more concerned with each notification. At the small Italian restaurant, tucked away on a quiet street, she finally called him on it. You should take care of whatever it is, she said, watching him check his messages for the 10th time. I don't want to be responsible for your empire crumbling. Max looked up, chagrined. I'm sorry, it's just... There are some complications with the deal. Nothing I can't handle tomorrow. Max? She reached across the table, taking his hand. I'm not going anywhere. Well, not for 3 days. Anyway, handle your business. He studied her for a long moment. Have dinner with me tonight? My place, I'll cook. You cook? I have hidden depths, he smiled. Plus, I want to show you something. The way he said it made her heart skip. Okay. Dinner at your place. They parted with a kiss that promised more, and Evelyn spent the afternoon exploring the city on her own. She wrote lyrics in Washington Square Park, called Ramona to gush about the morning, and tried not to think about how quickly she was falling for a man she barely knew. At 7, Max's driver picked her up in the Mustang. a detail that made her smile. The drive to his penthouse felt both too long and too short. When the elevator opened directly into his apartment, Evelyn's breath caught. Floor to ceiling. Windows offered a stunning view of Manhattan at sunset. The space was modern but warm, with leather and wood and subtle touches of comfort among the luxury. But what drew her eye was the grand piano in the corner, its black surface gleaming in the dying light. "You play?" she asked, running her fingers along the keys. "Used to," Mother insisted on lessons. Max appeared behind her, changed from his suit into dark jeans and a soft gray sweater that made her want to touch him. "I'm out of practice, but something tells me you could make it sing." Before she could respond, her phone chimed with a text. The number was unknown, but the message was clear. "Enjoying your fairy tale? Ask him about the night his father died. Ask him what really happened to his last business partner. Some princes aren't what they seem. A friend?" Evelyn stared at the screen, feeling ice spread through her veins. Max's arm slipped around her waist from behind, his lips finding her neck. "Everything okay?" She closed the message, forcing a smile as she turned in his arms. "Perfect. Now you promised me dinner." But as they moved to the kitchen, the text haunted her. Who had sent it? Vivian seemed the obvious choice, but the warning felt too specific, too pointed to be mere jealousy. Max opened wine, started preparing something that smelled amazing, and told her stories about learning to cook from his housekeeper as a child. He was charming, attentive, seemingly perfect. But now questions nagged at her. What didn't she know about Maxwell Reed? What secrets lay behind his carefully constructed world? "Hey." His voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Where'd you go just now?" Evelyn looked at him, this man who had upended her life in less than 2 days, and made a decision. "Tell me about your father," she said softly. "About the night he died." Max went very still, his hand tightening on his wineglass. "Why?" "Because I want to know you," she said, which was true enough. The real you, not the public version. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he moved to the windows, staring out at his city. "It was my fault," he said. "Finally. We had fought that night, about the company, about my plans to expand into Asia. He was driving angry, distracted. The crash..." Evelyn went to him, touching his arm gently. "Max. The police said he must have fallen asleep at the wheel. Simple accident, but I knew if I hadn't pushed him that night." He turned to her, his eyes dark with old pain. "Is that what you wanted to know? That I'm responsible for my father's death?" "No," she whispered, stretching up to kiss him softly. "I wanted to know what hurts you, what makes you human." He kissed her back with desperate intensity, like a drowning man finding air. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight," he breathed. "Not just dinner. Stay." Every rational thought said to slow down, to be careful. But Evelyn was tired of being rational. She was tired of safe choices and careful steps. "Yes," she said simply. What she didn't say was that someone wanted her to doubt him, wanted to plant seeds of suspicion. What she didn't ask about was his last business partner, or what other secrets might be hiding behind his vulnerability. Instead, she let him lead her to the piano, let him pull her down beside him on the bench. "Play something with me," he said. "Something new." As their fingers found the keys together, as new melodies emerged from their collaboration, Evelyn pushed away her doubts. She had 3 days to discover the truth about Maxwell Reed. 3 days to decide if this symphony they were creating was worth the risk of a broken heart. But for now, she would live in this moment, in the music they made together, in the way his body felt pressed against hers as night fell over Manhattan. For now, she would believe in the magic. The anonymous text could wait until morning. Low, jazz played from hidden speakers as Max and Evelyn shared the last of their wine, the remains of dinner long forgotten. The city light sparkled beyond the windows, creating an intimate cocoon around them. Their impromptu piano duet had evolved into Evelyn teaching Max the chords to her newest song, his hands following hers across the keys, learning her rhythms. "You're a natural," she said, watching him pick up the melody. "Why did you stop playing?" Max's fingers stilled on the keys. After Father died, it felt wrong. He'd paid for every lesson, sat through every recital. Playing without him there seemed impossible. Evelyn placed her hand over his. "Music heals, Max. Sometimes it's the only thing that can reach those broken places inside us." He turned to her, the intensity of his gaze making her breath catch. "Is that what you're doing to me? Healing me?" Before she could respond, he kissed her, deep, passionate, with none of the careful restraint from earlier. Evelyn melted into him, letting the last of her doubts fade away as his hands tangled in her hair. "Stay," he whispered against her. Lips, not a question this time. "Yes," she breathed. Max stood, pulling her up with him. In one smooth motion, he swept her into his arms, making her laugh in surprise. "I've wanted to do this since I first saw you on that stage," he said, carrying her toward his bedroom. "Careful," she teased, though her heart was racing. "A girl might think you planned this." "I plan everything, Evelyn Hart." He set her down gently in his room, where the city lights painted patterns across his massive bed. "Except you. You're the most beautifully unplanned thing that's ever happened to me." Their kisses grew heated, hands exploring, breathing ragged. When Max's lips found her neck, Evelyn gasped, clutching his shoulders. "Wait," she managed. He pulled back immediately, concern in his eyes. "Too fast?" "No, I just—" She touched his face gently. "I want you to know this isn't something I do. Fall into bed with men I barely know." "I know." He kissed her palm. "I don't either. With women, I mean. This is different." The vulnerability in his voice made her heart ache. She pulled him down for another kiss, slower this time, savoring every moment. Their clothes fell away between kisses and whispered words of encouragement. When they finally came together, it was with an intensity that surprised them both. Not just physical connection, but something deeper, as if their souls recognized each other. Later, wrapped in soft sheets and each other, Evelyn traced patterns on Max's chest while he played with her hair. The city hummed below them, a distant lullaby. "Tell me a secret," she murmured, feeling safe and cherished in the darkness. Max was quiet for a moment. "I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of how much I feel for you already." His arms tightened around her. "Of how easy it would be to fall in love with you." Evelyn's heart skipped. "Is that such a bad thing?" "It is when I've only known you 3 days. When you're leaving in 2, when my life is—" He sighed. "Complicated." She propped herself up on an elbow, studying his face in the dim light. "Because of Vivian?" "Partly." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "There are things about my past, about the company, like what happened to your last business partner." Max went very still. "How do you know about that?" Evelyn sat up, pulling the sheet around herself. "Someone texted me, warning me about you." "Vivian." His voice was hard now. "What exactly did she say?" "It was an unknown number. They mentioned your father's death and your former partner. Said you weren't what you seemed." She watched his reaction carefully. "Was it Vivian?" Max sat up too, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Probably. She's bitter. Things ended badly between us." "How badly?" He was quiet for a long moment. "My previous business partner, James Crawford, was having an affair with her while we were together. When I found out, I bought him out of the company. He and Vivian moved to London together. And 6 months later, he died in a boating accident." Max's voice was carefully neutral. "Vivian blamed me. Said I'd orchestrated it somehow as revenge. It was nonsense, of course. I was in Shanghai when it happened. Evelyn absorbed this, thinking about the warning text. Why would she try to turn me against you? Because she's back in New York and alone. James left everything to his ex-wife, not her. Now Vivian's trying to work her way back into my life, and you're in her way. He reached for her hand. Evelyn, I swear to you, I had nothing to do with James's death. She looked at their joined hands. I believe you. But I need to know what other complications might be waiting. I'm falling for you, Max, hard and fast and probably foolishly. I need to know what I'm falling into. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. No more secrets, I promise. Tomorrow I'll tell you everything about the company, about my father, all of it. Just stay here with me tonight. Let me hold you. Evelyn melted back into his embrace, letting his warmth chase away her doubts. Soon, his breathing evened out in sleep, but she lay awake, thinking. Her phone lit up on the bedside table. Another text. From the unknown number. Ask him about the offshore accounts. Ask him why the Shanghai deal is really falling apart. Time's running out, little songbird. Evelyn turned off her phone, curling closer to Max. But sleep was long in coming, and when it did, her dreams were troubled by shadowy figures and unfinished melodies. Across town, in a luxurious apartment overlooking Central Park, Vivian Blackwell sat at her desk, a glass of wine in hand. On her computer screen, financial records from Reed Development Group glowed with damning evidence. Next to them, a photo showed a younger Max shaking hands with a Chinese businessman, both smiling for cameras. "Oh, Maxwell," she murmured, touching the screen. "You should have chosen me. Now your little singer will have to learn the hard way what happens to people who trust you." She picked up her phone, composing another text, but before she could send it, a new email caught her eye. The Kano subject line made her smile. Shanghai deal, final proof. In his bed, Max slept on, unaware of the storm's gathering. His arms tightened around Evelyn unconsciously, as if trying to protect her from what was coming. But some notes, once played, can't be unheard. Some truths, once revealed, can't be buried again. And sometimes, the greatest love stories are born in the spaces between truth and lies, in the moments when we choose to believe in someone despite all evidence suggesting we shouldn't. As dawn approached, Evelyn finally drifted off, Max's heartbeat steady against her cheek. In her last conscious thought, she wondered if 3 days would be enough time to learn the truth about Maxwell Reed, and if she was strong enough to handle whatever that truth might be. Evelyn woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of fresh coffee. For a moment, she lay still in Max's enormous bed, taking in the view of Manhattan spread out before her like a dream. The sheets were soft against her skin, carrying the lingering scent of his cologne. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Ramona and another text from the unknown number, but before she could check either, Max appeared in the doorway. He was already dressed in a sharp navy suit, though his feet were bare and his hair still damp from the shower. "Good morning," he said, carrying 2 coffee cups. "I didn't want to wake you, but I have an emergency board meeting in an hour." "The Shanghai deal?" Evelyn sat up, accepting the coffee gratefully. She noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept checking his watch. Among other things, he sat on the edge of the bed, watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. "Last night was amazing," she finished, reaching for his hand. "Complicated but amazing." His smile was tender as he brought her hand to his lips. "Stay here today. Work on your music. Use the piano. I'll try to wrap up early and take you somewhere special tonight." "Max." She set down her coffee. "We need to talk about those texts. About James and your father and whatever's happening with Shanghai." His expression closed slightly. "I know. Tonight, I promise. I'll tell you everything." He stood, checking his watch again. "I have to go. Daniel's already called twice." "Max." She caught his arm before he could leave. "Whatever it is, whatever's happening, just be honest with me." He cupped her face in his hands, kissing her deeply. Tonight, he whispered against her lips. Then he was gone, leaving Evelyn alone with her thoughts and the glittering city beyond, the windows. She spent the morning exploring his apartment, finding hints of the man behind the billion-dollar facade. A worn copy of The Great Gatsby on his nightstand, old vinyl jazz records carefully preserved, photos of a younger Max with his father beside the Mustang. At the piano, she worked on her new song, the one about taking chances and falling too fast, but her concentration kept breaking as her phone buzzed with notifications. Finally, she checked the latest text from the unknown number. Board meetings about to start. Watch how quickly empires fall. Turn on CNBC. Her hands shaking slightly, Evelyn found the remote and turned on Max's massive TV. The financial news channel was running a breaking story. Reed Development Group under investigation. Sources claim evidence of illegal dealings in Shanghai project. Her heart stopped as she read the ticker. Anonymous whistleblower provides documents suggesting widespread corruption. CEO Maxwell Reed named in offshore account scandal. Her phone rang. Ramona. Eve, are you seeing this? It's all over. The financial news. I'm seeing it. Evelyn's voice felt distant to her own ears. Ram, I spent the night with him. Girl? Ramona's tone was gentle but worried. Get out of there. Now. This is bigger than some whirlwind romance. He said he'd explain everything tonight. And you believe him? Before Evelyn could answer, the elevator chimed. Her heart jumped, but instead of Max, Vivian Blackwell stepped out looking immaculate in a white pantsuit. I'll call you back, Evelyn said quickly, ending the call. Miss Hart. Vivian's smile was razor sharp. I hoped I'd find you here. We need to talk. How did you get in? I still have the codes. Maxwell never changes them. Vivian moved through the apartment like she owned it, trailing perfectly manicured fingers along the piano keys. I assume you've seen the news? Did you do this? Evelyn demanded. The texts, the scandal? I merely exposed the truth, something Maxwell has never been good at. Vivian produced a USB drive from her purse. Everything's here. The real records of the Shanghai deal, proof of what happened to James, even evidence about the night his father died. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Evelyn stared at the drive. Why are you showing me this? Because despite what Maxwell thinks, I loved him once. Real love, not this fairy tale you two are playing at. Vivian's expression softened slightly. He's not a bad man, Evelyn, but he is his father's son, ruthless when it comes to business, willing to do whatever it takes to win. You're trying to turn me against him. I'm trying to save you from what happened to me. Vivian set the drive on the piano. Read it or don't, but know this. By tonight, these documents will be in the hands of the SEC. Maxwell's empire is about to crumble, and anyone too close to him will fall too. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and that song you were working on? The one about taking chances? Maybe add a verse about looking before you leap. After Vivian left, Evelyn sat at the piano for a long time, staring at the USB drive. The TV continued to buzz with speculation about Reed Development Group's future. Her phone lit up with another text, this time from Max. Don't watch the news. Don't trust anything you hear. I'm handling it. Please be there when I get home. Tears burned in her eyes as she picked up the drive. Everything in her screamed to trust Max, to believe in the connection they'd forged. But the journalist's daughter in her, the one who'd learned to question everything, couldn't ignore the evidence piling up. She plugged the drive into her laptop. Hours later, as the sun set over Manhattan, Evelyn sat in Max's living room with her guitar, playing the song she'd written about him. But now the lyrics about fate and destiny felt hollow, tainted by what she'd learned. The elevator chimed again. This time it was Max who stepped out, looking exhausted and haunted. When he saw her, relief flooded his face. You're still here. He moved toward her but stopped when she stood up, backing away. Tell me it's not true, she whispered. Tell me you didn't know about the workers in Shanghai, about the bribes, about James's insurance policy. The color drained from Max's face. You've been talking to Vivian. I've been reading the truth. Evelyn's voice broke. Did you really think you could hide it forever? Evelyn, please. He reached for her, but she moved away. Let me explain. Explain what? How you let your father drive drunk that night, because you knew his death would let you take control of the company. How you arranged for James to die after you found out he was gathering evidence against you. Or how about the families in Shanghai, who lost everything because of your development project? It's not that simple. His voice rose with desperation. Yes, I've done things I'm not proud of. Yes, I've made choices that look terrible on paper, but everything I did was to protect the company, to protect the thousands of people who depend on us for their livelihoods. And that makes it right? No. He sank onto the piano bench, looking defeated. No, it doesn't make it right, but meeting you, for the first time in my life, I wanted to be better, to be worthy of how you look at me. Evelyn felt tears sliding down her cheeks. How can I trust anything you say now? Because I love you. The words hung in the air between them. 2 days, Evelyn. It took 2 days for you to completely upend my world, to make me want to change everything. Her heart ached with the sincerity in his voice. Love isn't enough, Max. Not when there's blood on the money that bought this view. She picked up her guitar case, glad she'd never fully unpacked. I'm going back to Nashville. Early flight, already booked. Evelyn, please. Max's voice cracked. Stay. Help me fix this. Help me become the man you thought I was. She paused at the elevator, looking back at him one last time. In the fading light, he looked lost, broken, human. For a moment, she wavered. Some things can't be fixed with a song, she said softly. Goodbye, Max. The elevator doors closed on his devastated face. As she descended toward the ground floor, Evelyn hugged her guitar case to her chest and let herself cry. For the fairy tale that wasn't. For the man she'd fallen in love with, who turned out to be an illusion, and for the song she'd never finish now. What she didn't know was that upstairs, Max was already making calls, setting things in motion that would either save or destroy everything. And across town, Vivian raised a glass to her computer screen, where an email sat unsent, one that could change everything again. The night spread over Manhattan like a final curtain, while 3 hearts beat out of sync, each wondering if love was worth the price of truth. The Nashville rain drummed against Evelyn's apartment window, matching the hollow rhythm in her chest. A week had passed since she'd fled New York, since she'd left Maxwell Reed standing broken in his penthouse. 7 days of ignoring his calls, his texts, the flowers that kept arriving at her door. Ramona sat cross-legged on Evelyn's bed, scrolling through news articles on her phone. They're saying he's cooperating with the investigation, turning over documents, naming names. The stock's still falling, but... Stop. Evelyn pressed her fingers to her temples. I can't hear any more about him. You're going to have to face it eventually. Ramona's voice was gentle. The press found out about you. They're calling Eve. Everyone wants to know about the mysterious singer who spent 3 days with Maxwell Reed right before his empire started crumbling. Evelyn stared at her guitar, propped in the corner where it had sat untouched since her return. Every time she tried to play, all she could hear was Max's voice. All she could feel were his hands guiding hers across piano keys. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number that had started it all. Missing him yet? There's more to the story. Meet me at the morning grind. 2 p.m. Don't go, Ramona said, reading over her shoulder. It's obviously Vivian trying to manipulate you again. But something in Evelyn's gut told her this wasn't Vivian. The style was different, more direct. She checked the time, 1:30 p.m. I need to know, she said, standing. I need to understand all of it. The coffee shop was nearly empty when she arrived, the afternoon lull making it easy to spot the man sitting in the corner. He was older, distinguished, with silver hair and sharp eyes that tracked her approach. Miss Hart. He stood, offering his hand. I'm Robert Chen, Richard's father. Evelyn's heart skipped. The wedding. It felt like a lifetime ago. You sent the texts? Some of them. He gestured for her to sit. Vivian provided the information, but she didn't know I was involved. Please, let me explain. A server brought coffee, neither of them would touch. Robert Chen folded his hands, on the table studying Evelyn with eyes that missed nothing. Maxwell Reed is not his father's son, he said finally. That's what everyone got wrong, including Vivian. Howard Reed was ruthless, yes, but he had lines he wouldn't cross. Maxwell erased those lines years ago. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the first person in years who made him want to redraw them. Robert pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. The night Howard died, he had evidence, proof that Maxwell had been embezzling funds, setting up shadow companies. He confronted his son, threatened to turn him in. The crash wasn't an accident. Evelyn's hands shook as she opened the folder. Inside were photos, documents, a handwritten letter from Howard Reed, dated the day he died. And James Crawford? Got too close to the truth. Maxwell didn't arrange the accident directly, he's too smart for that. But money can buy many things, including convenient tragedies. Evelyn felt sick. Why didn't you take this to the authorities? Howard was my friend. I've spent years gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. When I saw you at the wedding, saw how Maxwell looked at you. Robert's eyes softened. I thought perhaps you could reach him, make him confess, make it right, Instead, I ran away. You did the right thing. He touched her hand gently. But now I need your help. Maxwell's trying to get ahead of the investigation, offering up smaller players to protect himself. If he succeeds, everything Howard died, trying to expose will stay buried. Evelyn stared at the documents, her mind racing. What do you need from me? Go back to New York. Make him think you believe in him, that you want to help him start fresh. Get him to talk about Howard, about that night. We only need a confession. You want me to wear a wire? It wasn't a question. We want justice. For Howard, for James, for all the others Maxwell has destroyed climbing to the top. Evelyn closed the folder, pushing it back across the table. I can't. Not because I don't believe you, but because... She swallowed hard. Because I still love him. God help me. Even knowing all this, I still love him. Robert Chen's expression hardened. Love won't bring back the dead, Miss Hart. Or help the families he's ruined. No. Evelyn stood, her voice steady despite her racing heart. But maybe love is exactly what Maxwell Reed needs to find his way back to the lines his father drew. She left the coffee shop in a daze, the rain having stopped to leave everything looking clean and sharp. Her phone showed 3 missed calls, from Max and a text. I'm in Nashville. Please let me explain. Not excuses, just truth. You deserve that much. Before she could respond, another text came through, from Vivian this time. Whatever Robert Chen told you, remember he has his own agenda. Not everyone seeking revenge wants justice. Some just want to watch empires fall. Evelyn's head spun. Who was telling the truth? Robert Chen with his damning evidence? Vivian with her cryptic warnings? Or Max, who had looked at her with such raw honesty when he said he loved her? She found herself walking to the fire escape of her apartment building, her favorite spot to think. The city spread out below her, so different from Manhattan's glittering heights, but just as full of stories, of secrets, of people trying to find their way through the dark. Her phone buzzed one final time. Max again. I'm at the Bluebird Cafe. Our song is still unfinished. Help me write the ending it deserves. Evelyn closed her eyes, feeling the weight of choices pressing down on her. She could go to him, here, his side, risk her heart again. Or she could call Robert Chen, agree to help bring down the man who might have killed his own father. Or maybe there was a third option, one that could lead to truth and redemption both. Opening her eyes, she made her decision. The next move would change everything, she knew. But some songs needed to be finished no matter the cost. She picked up her guitar for the first time in a week and began to play, letting the music guide her toward whatever came next. In her mind, she could still hear Max's voice saying he loved her, still feel the way his hands had moved over piano keys. Some melodies couldn't be forgotten even when broken. Some loves couldn't be denied, even when stained with darkness. And sometimes, the hardest notes to play were the ones that led to truth. The Bluebird Cafe glowed like a beacon in the Nashville twilight, its neon sign casting blue shadows across the rain-slick pavement. Evelyn stood across the street, her guitar case heavy in her hand, watching through the window as Max sat alone, at a corner table. Even here, surrounded by the casual atmosphere of her world, he looked every inch the billionaire CEO in his tailored suit, though his usual perfect posture was bent with worry. She'd made her decision on that fire escape, looking out over her city. Now she just had to be strong enough to follow through. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door. The familiar scent of coffee and worn wood wrapped around her as conversations hushed. Several regulars nodded in recognition, but their eyes lingered on Max, clearly wondering what brought Manhattan royalty to their sanctuary. Max stood when he saw her, hope and fear warring in his expression. "You came. This is my home," she said simply, setting her guitar case down. "The question is, why are you here?" "Because this is where you are." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, just listen." Evelyn sat, noting the untouched whiskey in front of him, the way his hands couldn't quite stay still. Up close, she could see the toll of the past week in the shadows under his eyes, the slight stubble on his jaw. "Robert Chen found you," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And he told you about my father, about that night." "Yes." Max turned his father's ring on his pinky finger, a nervous tell she'd come to recognize. "What he told you, it's not the whole truth." "Then tell me, all of it. No more half-truths, no more protecting me or yourself." Evelyn leaned forward. "If you love me like you say you do, give me the truth I deserve." The live music stage behind them was empty, but the silence between them felt full of unsung melodies, of words fighting to be heard. "My father was dying," Max said finally, his voice low and raw. "Cancer. He'd hidden it from everyone except his doctor, but I found out. The night of the crash, he'd received his final prognosis. 3 months, maybe less." Evelyn's heart squeezed, but she stayed silent, letting him continue. "The evidence he had against me? Real. I had been moving money, setting up shadow companies. But not for myself. For him. Experimental treatments in Switzerland, research programs he'd wanted to fund anonymously. He found out and was furious not because of the illegality, but because I'd discovered his secret." "The crash?" Max's hands trembled slightly. "He was driving to confront me, yes. But he was also driving to his lawyer to change his will. To protect me from what he saw as my own reckless attempts to save him. The accident." His voice broke. "The accident was just that. An accident. But I let everyone believe I was responsible because the truth felt worse somehow. My father died, trying to save me from myself." Evelyn reached across the table, taking his shaking hands in hers. "And James Crawford?" "Vivian was working with him from the start. They thought they could force me out, take control of the company. When James died..." Max met her eyes steadily. "I didn't arrange it. But I didn't stop it either. Vivian had set something in motion trying to frame me, but it backfired. James was never supposed to be on that boat." "Why didn't you tell me all this before?" "Because I wanted to be the man you thought I was when you first sang for me. Someone worthy of your voice, your heart." He squeezed her hands. "The Shanghai deals, the offshore accounts. Yes, I broke laws. Yes, I crossed lines. But not for greed. Every project funded hospitals, schools, community centers, things my father had always wanted to do but couldn't while answering to shareholders. And now, with the investigation? Now I'm telling the truth. All of it. The SEC, the FBI, they have everything. Every document, every transaction. I'm not protecting myself anymore. His blue-gray eyes held hers. I'm trying to protect my father's real legacy. The good we've done alongside the bad. Evelyn absorbed this, thinking of Robert Chen's accusations, of Vivian's warnings. Why should I believe you? Because I love you. Max stood, moving around the table to kneel beside her chair. The gesture drew gasps from nearby tables, but he seemed not to notice. Because you make me want to be the man my father always hoped I'd become. Because your voice woke up something in me I thought had died with him. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. This is my confession. Everything I just told you. Everything I've done, I'm turning it in tomorrow morning. He pressed it into her hands. Read it. If you still walk away, I'll understand. But if there's any part of you that still believes in us. Evelyn stared at the paper, then at the man kneeling before her. This complicated, flawed, loving man who had upended her world in the space of 3 days. Stand up, she whispered. He did, uncertainty in his eyes. Evelyn stood too, taking his face in her hands. I need you to understand something. I fell in love with you. Not your money, not your power, just you. The man who drives his father's car to feel close to him. The man who remembered how I take my tea. The man who listens to music like it's telling him secrets. Evelyn. I'm not finished. She took a shaky breath. If we do this, if we try again, it has to be built on truth. Complete truth. No more secrets. No more protecting each other from the hard parts. Anything, he breathed. She picked up her guitar case. Then come with me. There's something I need to show you first. Outside, the Nashville night had turned soft with misty rain. Max followed her to her car without question, even when she drove them to the city's outskirts to a small cemetery overlooking the Cumberland River. My father's not dead, she said as they walked between the headstones. But my mother is. Right here. She stopped at a simple marker. Caroline Hart. She died when I was 16 trying to save her wedding dress shop during a flood. The same determination, the same stubbornness I see in you. She had it too. The need to protect what matters, no matter the cost. Max stood, silent beside her as she continued. I understand choosing wrong things for right reasons. I understand living with regret. But I need you to understand something too. She turned to face him, rain dripping from her hair. Love isn't just about grand gestures or protected secrets. Sometimes it's about standing in the rain, telling hard truths and choosing to build something new from the broken pieces. Max pulled her close, his suit getting soaked as he held her. Then let's build something new, together. No more secrets, no more shadows. Evelyn buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with rain. The song I wrote about us, it's not finished yet. Then let's finish it. He pulled back enough to see her face. Whatever comes tomorrow. With the investigation, whatever Robert Chen or Vivian try to do, we'll face it together. Just don't let go this time. She kissed him then, in the rain, among the memories of those who'd loved too fiercely, too completely. When they broke apart, she whispered against his lips, "Take me home." But as they drove back toward the city, neither of them saw the car following at a distance or recognized Vivian behind the wheel, her expression set with determination. Neither knew that Robert Chen was meeting with federal agents presenting evidence that went far beyond what Max planned to confess. The night wrapped around them like a promise, but tomorrow waited with its own plans, its own revelations. For now, though, they had rain and truth and each other. Sometimes that had to be enough. Dawn broke over Nashville with the promise of storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Evelyn woke in her small apartment to find Max already awake, sitting at her window with his phone in hand. The worried crease between his brows told her everything she needed to know. How bad? She asked, pushing herself up. Worse than we thought. He turned to her, his blue-gray eyes troubled. Robert Chen didn't just go to the FBI. He went to every major news outlet, the story's breaking now. Evelyn grabbed her own phone, seeing the headlines flooding in. Reed Empire built on lies? Maxwell Reed, the dark truth behind the billions. Sources claim Howard Reed murder, not accident. They can't prove any of it, Max said, but his voice was hollow. The confession I wrote? It's not enough anymore. They want blood. A sharp knock at the door made them both jump. Evelyn opened it to find Ramona looking frantic. Turn on the TV, she said, pushing past them. Now. The local news was showing a live press conference. Vivian Blackwell stood at a podium, her elegant composure a stark contrast to her devastating words. I can no longer remain silent about what I witnessed. Maxwell Reed's corruption goes beyond mere financial crimes. The night Howard Reed died, I was there. I saw everything. Max's face went ashen. She's lying. She wasn't there. She didn't even know me then. But she knew your father, a voice said from the doorway. Robert Chen stepped into the apartment, followed by 2 federal agents. She was his secretary, wasn't she, Maxwell? Before, she reinvented herself as the sophisticated Vivian Blackwell. Understanding dawned on Max's face. Victoria Bennett. You worked for my father's personal office. And saw everything, Robert confirmed, including what really happened that night. The federal agents moved forward, but Evelyn stepped between them and Max. Wait, please. Let him tell the truth, the real truth. Max's hand found hers, squeezing tight. That night, I went to the office to confront my father about the cancer treatments. Vivian, was there late like always. She heard everything. The argument about the illegal accounts, about the treatments, about his plan to change his will. And then? Robert pressed. Then he left, to drive to his lawyer. I stayed behind, destroying evidence of the offshore accounts. But Vivian, Max closed his eyes. Vivian followed him. I did. Everyone turned to find Vivian herself in the doorway, still in her press conference outfit. I followed him because I loved him. Howard Reed was everything his son isn't, honorable, principled, kind. He'd promised to leave everything to charity, to expose the corruption. I couldn't let that happen. You? Max's voice broke. You caused the crash? I meant to stop him, to talk to him. Tears slid down Vivian's perfect makeup. But he was so angry, driving so fast. When I pulled up alongside him, tried to get him to pull over, he swerved. The federal agents moved quickly, then cuffing Vivian as she continued, her composure finally cracking. I let you believe you were responsible, Maxwell. Let the guilt eat at you while I worked my way into your life, into your company. It should have been mine. Howard promised. That's enough. Robert Chen's voice was gentle but firm. Maxwell, the confession you wrote. Do you still have it? Max pulled the paper from his jacket, handing it over. Everything I did is in there. The illegal accounts, the Shanghai deals, all of it. But not my father's death. Never that. The older man read it carefully, then passed it to the agents. This matches our investigation. Full cooperation. Voluntary disclosure. And now, with Miss Blackwell's confession. Thunder rolled outside as the agents led Vivian away. She stopped at the door, looking back at Max with something like regret. I really did love your father. And part of me loved you, too, for being so much like him in the end. After she was gone, Robert Chen turned to Max. The charges will be serious, but with your cooperation and confession, well, let's just say prison time isn't inevitable. Community service, restitution, a complete restructuring of the company. Whatever it takes, Max said firmly. I want to make it right, all of it. Even if it means losing everything? Not everything. Max turned to Evelyn, who hadn't left his side through any of it. Some things are worth more than empires. The storm finally broke outside, rain lashing against the windows. Robert Chen left with the remaining agent, promising to have his lawyers contact Max's team. When they were alone, Evelyn led Max to her piano. a simple upright nothing like his grand piano in New York. "Play with me," she said softly. "Our song needs an ending." His hands joined hers on the keys, and together they found the melody they'd started that first night. But this time, when Evelyn began to sing, the words were different. "Some truths take time to tell, some hearts take time to heal, but love that's built on honest ground is the only love that's real." Max's voice joined hers on the chorus, rough but sincere. "3 days or forever, now we know which one we'll choose. Through storms and tender mercies, some songs refuse to lose." Later, as they sat tangled together on her small couch watching the rain, Max asked, "What happens now?" "Now we build something new," Evelyn said, tracing the lines of his palm. "Something honest, something real. Even with all the chaos coming, the trials, the media, the restructuring, even with all of it." She kissed him softly. "You're not your father's son anymore, Max. You're becoming your own man. That's worth every storm we'll face." He pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her hair. "Marry me." She laughed. "That's not building slowly." "No," he agreed, "but it's building honestly. Marry me, Evelyn Hart. Help me create something better than what came before. Something worthy of your voice, your heart." Outside, the storm began to ease, sunlight breaking through the clouds. Evelyn thought about fairy tales and reality, about complicated men and redemption, about love that survives truth and darkness to emerge stronger. "Yes," she whispered against his lips, "but on one condition." "Anything." "We get married here, in Nashville. Small, simple, real. Like our song. Like our love." The future wasn't certain. There would be trials and headlines, restructuring, and restitution. The Reed empire would change, transform into something new. But as Max and Evelyn sat in her small apartment, planning a future built on truth rather than power, they knew they'd found something rarer than success, more valuable than billions. They'd found their own melody, their own truth, their own way to make music in the world. And somewhere perhaps Howard Reed was smiling, knowing his son had finally learned the most important lesson, that love, honest and true, was worth more than any empire ever built. 1 year later, the Bluebird cafe was packed to capacity, string lights twinkling overhead as Evelyn Reed adjusted her guitar strap. The simple gold band on her left hand caught the light, matching the one on Max's hand as he sat in their usual corner table, his suit jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than anyone who'd known him in his CEO days would have believed possible. "This next song," Evelyn said into the microphone, her honey blonde waves falling loose around her shoulders, "is about second chances and building something real. Some of you might have read about our story in the papers, but this is the true version, the one that matters." In the audience, Ramona sat with her new boyfriend, Daniel Reeves, Max's former CFO, who'd helped restructure the company into the Reed Foundation. Robert Chen was there too, now serving as the foundation's board chairman, his eyes bright with approval as he watched the couple who'd helped bring truth to light. The past year had been a whirlwind of changes. Max had pled guilty to the financial charges, but his full cooperation and Vivian's confession about Howard's death had resulted in a suspended sentence and mandatory community service. The Reed empire had been transformed into a charitable foundation, focusing on healthcare access and community development, finishing the work Howard Reed had wanted to do all along. Evelyn's fingers found the opening chords of their song, the one she'd started writing that first night in New York, the one they'd finished together in the rain. But before she could begin, a small cry from near the stage made her smile. "I think someone wants to join in," she said, nodding to Max. He stood, lifting their 3-month-old daughter from her carrier. Little Caroline Hope Reed, named for, both their mothers had her father's blue-gray eyes and her mother's musical soul. She quieted immediately as Max brought her close to the stage, swaying gently as Evelyn began to sing. The song told their story, all of it. The voice that changed everything. The 3 days that became forever. The storms they'd weathered and the truth that had set them free. When she reached the new verse they'd written after Caroline's birth, Max's voice joined hers. No longer, rough but practiced from months of late-night duets. From Manhattan lights to Nashville rain, love finds its way through joy and pain. What started with a single song grew into a symphony strong. The audience sat transfixed, many wiping away tears. They'd read about Maxwell Reed's fall from grace, about the singer who'd helped him find redemption. But here was the real story, set to music that spoke of hope and second chances. In the back of the cafe, a frame held the first dollar bill Evelyn had earned performing there. Next to it hung a news article with the headline, "Reed Foundation launches music education program in underserved communities." Below that was a small wedding photo. Max and Evelyn on the banks of the Cumberland River, her in a vintage-inspired dress, him in a suit but no tie, both laughing as Nashville's sunshine blessed their union. As the song ended, little Caroline cooed, reaching for the stage lights. Max pressed a kiss to her curls, remembering a time when he'd thought power and money were all that mattered. Now his world was measured in different ways, in songs and smiles, in quiet mornings and midnight lullabies, in the way his daughter's eyes lit up when she heard her mother's voice. The Reed name meant something different now. Not an empire, built on secrets, but a legacy of truth and transformation. Howard would have been proud. Evelyn stepped down from the stage, taking Caroline from Max's arms. "Ready to head home? I think someone's getting sleepy." "In a minute," Max said, pulling them both close. "I just want to remember this moment." Around them, the cafe buzzed with life and music. Ramona was already planning next month's benefit concert for the Foundation's newest initiative. Robert Chen was sharing stories about Howard with some of the regulars, keeping good memories alive while letting the painful ones fade. Outside, the Nashville night was warm and sweet, stars twinkling above the city that had given them a second chance. Their townhouse was just a few blocks away. Nothing like Max's Manhattan penthouse, but perfect for the life they'd chosen to build. "What are you thinking?" Evelyn asked as they walked home, Caroline sleeping peacefully in her stroller. Max took his wife's hand, running his thumb over her wedding ring. "That some songs take a lifetime to write." "Good thing we've got time," she smiled, squeezing his hand. Above them, a shooting star streaked across the Tennessee sky. Not as bright as Manhattan's lights, perhaps, but more real, more true. Just like the love that had survived secrets and storms to become something beautiful. Just like the music they'd keep making together, one note at a time, for all the days to come. If you were in Evelyn's shoes, would you believe in Max's transformation and give love a second chance even after discovering all the dark secrets of his past? Or would you follow Robert Chen's advice and help expose the truth, even if it meant destroying the man you fell in love with? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.